Animal House was an accident that happened. One day, Doug Kenney, who was one of the creators of the Lampoon, came to me and said, Matty, I really have had it. It's been 6 years now, and I just can't handle the deadlines anymore, and I just have to quit. And I was panicky. I didn't want to lose this guy. He was a star.
Doug was a true genius, and he had such an incredible imagination.
Doug is one of the great unsung heroes of comedy in this century.
Doug Kenney was one of the great wits I've ever met. I mean, really a literary and very funny person.
I just blurted out, you can't leave. And he said, why? And I knew Doug loved show business. And I said, we're going to do a movie. And it was just like that.
Doug Kenney and I started writing, and Doug sidetracked us into a high school movie. So we wrote a picture called Laser Orgy Girls, which was about Charles Manson in high school. We thought this would go over really big.
We read the first draft, and I said, I don't think this really works, guys. It's kind of funny, but really way out there.
I said, we can't do this in a movie. My God, you got them doing drugs and drinking and it's wild sex, and this is high school. I'll get lynched. We can't do this. But we got to move it to college.
And that's when Chris Miller came on board, because Chris Miller had written these wonderful college-based stories.
I was writing stories for the Lampoon all through the 70s. And at one point, I wrote some stories based on my fraternity experiences.
That's how it happened. Chris Miller, Doug Kenney, Harold Ramis. We were a team.
We worked for about 3 months. We just debriefing each other. We told every college anecdote we could remember, everything we'd ever thought, heard, felt, seen at college, every character we knew.
In my fraternity, in terms of mining it for characters, there was an otter, there was a flounder, there was a pinto.
Why pinto?
Why not?
But I would have to say that where the characters come from in Animal House, we called them archetypes, i.e. people that everybody knows. So if you went to college, you knew an otter, you knew a bluto, you knew a flounder.
So it's like we had all this energy and all this creativity and all this desire and all these great experiences to pour into this thing.
My relationship with Doug and Harold was great. It was the most joyous collaboration I have ever been a part of.
We divided the treatment up into thirds. Each of us wrote a third, and then we switched thirds and rewrote each other, and then switched again. So we each had worked on each third of the script, and that was basically the first draft of Animal House.
It was our job, really, to sort of develop this thing through drafts and get a good story going, until we had really what became Animal House.
But then Ivan gave us paperback copies of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and said, this is how a screenplay looks, do that. That was all we knew. None of us had been to film school or even had written in that form before.
None of us had ever written a script before, and so none of us had ever written a treatment before either.
This treatment was longer than most movie scripts. And at that point, we were ready to go.
So he came out here with a 104-page treatment.
Ted Ashley, Ted was then the chairman of Warner Brothers, read the script himself and said, you're wasting your time, it'll never make a movie.
He went around and nobody wanted it.
And out of the blue, about a week later, a guy calls me up from Universal Studios, and he said, Mr. Simmons, I work for Ned Tannen, who's the president of Universal Studios, and I just want you to know I'm a great Lampoon fan. And if you ever have anything, I said, stop.
Matty Simmons and I went and had a meeting with Ned Tannen, I think it was, here at Universal, and we made a deal in like 5 minutes. They said, fine, it's a development deal. Now, what I didn't know, because this was my first studio experience, was that a development deal is like a ticket to hell.
But Sean Daniel and Tom Mount were the two guys at Universal who really loved this project. And there's no question that it was the two of them that got this picture made at Universal.
I recognized in this treatment a ton of stuff that I thought was really funny, and really taking some chances with humor, with the culture, with the issue of rebellion.
Animal House was a misunderstood animal, if you will, throughout its entire history at Universal. But
Ned had a gleeful love for the project. He also hated it.
At the time, I was living with a wonderful woman who was also a script supervisor in low-budget feature films at the time. Her name was Catherine Wooten.
I was working with John on Kentucky Fried Movie, a small independent movie.
She'd go home, she'd say, well, we had, a midget in a clown suit beating these naked women, blew up a building, just bizarre, elephants defecating, whatever we were shooting that day.
I'm working with this very funny guy and tell him anecdotes about what was happening on the set.
And I saw this movie, Catherine was right, and this movie had real comedy spirit and sort of wonderful anarchy and really smart ways of doing things.
And when it was over, I said, I want that guy. He's got the sensibilities. He's crazy, he's nutty, he's a terrific craftsman, but he feels the lampoon.
I met him and liked him very much and thought he had absolutely the right attitude and energy for this film. And because of his great successes, particularly with his second film, the Kentucky Fried Movie, he was hireable.
Ivan Reitman, this is Ivan Reitman, the producer of Animal House. Hey!
We thought the way to make this picture was with Landis, and the script, while it was terrific, still needed refining. We thought John could help with that.
Without the right director, this movie was not going to happen. I sat down with John, and his take on it, how he saw it, and what he thought it should be was, in fact, exactly what it would be in its best form.
There's dialogue humor and sort of drawing room humor and bedroom humor, and the level of sophistication of the gags rise and fall. And it's a very traditional movie, I think. It has a very traditional story, people being bullied and then striking back. And they're very kind of the outrageous group.
Michael Chinich is the casting director that was sort of handed to us by Universal Studios. He's very simpatico and very empathetic and got it right away, understood it right away. And he was extremely instrumental in getting that extraordinary cast.
We were basically just looking for the right match, somebody who had talent, had the right physical characteristics, had a way about them.
The casting here was impeccable. Stephen First is Flounder. Peter Riegert is wonderful. Tim Matheson is Otter, and so forth.
He did a very good job in terms of finding unknowns that we could audition. And of course, we auditioned for months and months until we put together this wonderful ensemble cast.
I really felt strongly I wanted characters that you would believe as these characters.
They had to be unknowns because we had no budget. And the highest paid actor in the movie was Belushi, who got $40,000.
I had a lot of help. It was a very collaborative effort. John, Ivan, everybody was involved in every step of the way, and it was very helpful. And because of all the enthusiasm and brain power and raw talent and youth that went into this project, it just sort of, got lucky.
So we went about finding a bunch of basically unknowns. Peter Riegert, Kevin Bacon, Karen Allen, Tommy Hulce.
I think I got Animal House after about 4 auditions. If I remember correctly, it might have been a reading with Landis. Then I had an audition with Tim, and then with Karen.
And Peter and I read together, and I think I was very nervous. And I felt as though I had given a terrible audition.
I was delivering pizzas in Hollywood, and I thought it would be cool and a good way to get into the business if I put my picture and resume on each pizza.
John Landis had this idea that maybe they would find some, kids from acting schools. And he said, we're looking for preppy freshmen wet behind the ears. I'll never forget, that was the quote.
When they opened the lid to the pizza box, there was my picture staring them right in the face. And I was discovered by Maddie Simmons.
I went over to meet with the head of casting for Universal, and then she called me back to meet with John Landis.
And right from the start, I became suspicious. His office at that time was in some dingy old hall, very little light. This is the truth. I don't know whether he was setting me up or what. His desk was a couple of cardboard boxes. There might have been a chair or two, I don't know.
So I came in and I got to audition with Peter Rieger. And we hit it off and we were improvising and having fun with this, you know, it was a great character and a great story and great script. And so we just, you know, we had a lot of fun in the room.
When I read this script and knew that they were asking me to read for this part of Boone, I knew who this guy was. I mean, it was basically me.
I came back and auditioned again, and Landis did, the only time the director's ever done this to me, he took me outside after the second audition. He said, "We're going to hire you. We love you, you're great, we're going to hire you. Now don't say anything to anyone because, you know, and I'll deny this because I think for negotiating purposes, you know, you don't want to tip your hand." So, of course, they immediately called my agent.
I went in for that part, and John, I think, probably made up his mind instantly that I wasn't right for that, and he started asking me if I'd ever ridden a horse. And I didn't know what he was talking about or why he was talking about this, and I lied to him and said, of course, I was born on a ranch in Montana, and I've been riding horses since I was a kid.
So I walk in and I meet John, and I said, I have to sit down. You know, I can't tell you how sick I am. I must have had some bad food at this lunch. And do you mind if I put my feet up on your desk? I mean, I behaved in a way that I never would have if I hadn't been so sick.
John said to me, can you be smarmy? And I had no idea what that word meant, but just by the sound of it, I kind of had an idea, and I kind of made this face. And he said, that's great, that's great. Do that again.
And I got back on the plane almost immediately and flew home thinking, oh, well, you know, that's a learning experience. I'm sure I won't be cast in this.
And then I think I got a call back where I just made the face again. And then I forgot about it. I didn't have an agent or anything, so I thought, you know, it was such a long shot anyway.
And Michael Chinich, who was casting it, just said they wanted me to do Niedermeyer.
A few months later, the casting director called me up and said, hey, you got the movie. And I was like, wow.
And they wanted to cast me in the film, which you couldn't have surprised me more.
He said, if you want to do it, it's yours. And I nearly fell over.
And he said, you're getting scale. And I said, okay, great. I didn't know what scale was. Not that I didn't know how much scale was, I didn't know what the word meant. I just figured, I don't know. You know, I don't know. Get on a scale, we're going to weigh you before the picture starts or something. I didn't really know.
The studio was pretty horrified by my choices. They were really distressed.
I think one of the things that's a testament to why the movie was as wonderful as it was because they did just a great job of casting us right for our strengths.
It was so well cast that I said to Peter Rieger as Stephen first, or now semi-Flounder, I said, don't look now, but there's Bette Midler standing right over there by the luggage. And he looks over there and goes, yeah, I know. He says, that's my girlfriend, you know.
Because Stephen, at that time, was such a pathetic guy. He was so easy to crush.
The studio said to us, you know, we're not making this picture. You don't have a star. You know, who are these people? So Donald Sutherland finally agreed to be in the movie, and that's what got the movie greenlit.
Luckily, John was enormously enthusiastic, energetic, smart, and had a real handle on the picture, and it was hugely fun casting it.
You could see that this was going to work, especially the casting of Dean Wormer, John Vernon, and his wife, Verna Bloom.
I'm going to string him up by the balls, that's what I'm going to do.
You could tell that these people were larger-than-life characters, and the tone was right.
People say, I was Flounder, or I knew D. You know that D-Day was my best friend in college. They related to the characters. And that was, again, one of the beauties of Animal House.
I made the comment, at the center of any great animal house is a great animal. And the three of us looked at each other and said, Belushi.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Belushi.
Well, John Belushi was an incredible talent, just an amazing talent. He had a cartoon face. He had a real animated face. His eyebrows could express all kinds of things.
Ladies and gentlemen, intense fear. More intense. Much more terror. Absolute reassurance. Very confident. Extremely. Hey, Mr. Big Man on Campus. How are you? Anger. Real anger.
Furious. Furious. Rage. Rage.
As I recall, it was always the intention that John would be the star, that this was a vehicle for him, and that he would represent Lampoon in a certain way.
Faith. Real faith. The man's a true fan. True friend. But wait a minute. What's he doing? He's pulling out a gun.
And he was very committed. He had a feeling that it was a very important movie for him, and he was really giving it everything he had. And he's an extraordinarily talented guy, and so when he was focused that way, great things were going to come from it.
He was a delight because he was so gifted and so funny. You know, he was funny. John was just funny. He looked funny, you know, and he knew what was funny, and when he played things, he didn't leave anything in the bag. You know, he just went blah.
No college would let us shoot the movie on their campus.
We were getting closer to a start date. We'd begun to crew up. We'd begun to finish a cast. We still had no place to shoot it.
The dean of the University of Oregon in Eugene, he said, sure, come on up, film here. And we were like, really?
His story was that at one time when he was the president of another school, I guess the producers of The Graduate had sent him the script because they wanted to shoot there. And this guy read the script and hated The Graduate, said this will never make a good movie. And of course, when he saw the movie and saw it was great, he came to the conclusion that he doesn't know how to read scripts anyway. So when we came around, he decided just to take us on our face value, thank God, because that was the last one available.
He even let us shoot in his office. The dean's office was, or is, the dean's office at Eugene, and we put a horse in there. I mean, they let us shoot.
The whole Animal House mob stayed at a place called the Roadway Inn.
I had the Deltas come up a week early, 5 days early, to Oregon so that we could rehearse and basically hang out.
I thought that was the most incredibly smart idea, as simple as it may sound. And I think there was a huge camaraderie.
And we all sort of started playing our parts at that point.
We didn't associate with Mark Metcalf or Kevin Bacon too much because they were of the other fraternity.
Just a point to exclude the Omegas, and they hung over, they stayed away from us.
They walked in the dining room and there was instant. It was like these 3 actors show up. It's like, gosh, we're on location. They meet this table of hostility.
That's him. That's the asshole. So immediately I felt like outside this group.
And they would be sitting at a table by themselves, and the Deltas would be sitting at a table by themselves. And so we would throw things at them and look the other way and stuff like that.
Belushi jumped up, grabbed some food, and yelled,
Bruce McGill had somehow stolen a piano, and his room became party central.
He and I and maybe Riegert or somebody else, we kept passing this upright piano that was in the lobby. Nobody ever played it. I said, geez, they'll never miss this. Come on, let's take it.
We're moving with that piano, and this little guy is trotting along saying, I don't think you should be taking the piano.
They got all, where's their piano? It's right here. It's like we're not going to want to put it in the car and steal it.
I'm working all the time. These guys are hanging out a great deal of the time.
If we could get to Bruce McGill's room, it was always a lot of fun, just because, well, Bruce had a piano and a bar, and then people brought whatever else they wanted to bring.
And that's where everybody went to sing and dance and play the guitar and do all that 60s stuff, but also to drink and get drunk and do all that 70s stuff too.
The social life at the time, the late 70s, there was no AIDS, cocaine was okay. My God, it was amazing.
Because we were all 60s children, practically everybody plays guitar to some extent or the other. We all know those half a dozen chords that one needs to know in order to play most of the songs.
They were sincerely unhip. And so we just try to get them into that real kind of SS mold. I mean, if we could have put iron crosses on them, we would have put iron crosses on them.
It was hard to stay away from it, but I had to because that was my job, and I busied myself with spit polishing my shoes.
I wanted to hang out with them, but they wouldn't hang out with me. I mean, I was annoying, I was 18 years old or 19, and kind of chubby and, a pain in the ass.
I got the hotel to move my room to right above McGill's room, so that I had to listen all night long, or as long as it went on, to this noise, to this joy.
What's going on, guys? Hey, guys, where you going, guys? And they really didn't want to have anything to do with me.
that sense of alienation and that sense of this is the enemy, these people down there before, and all the spit polishing becomes a plotting. And what am I going to do? The shinier they got meant the more of their heads I was crushing.
I would want to go to Bruce's room, but I was never actually invited.
So that gave me a place to live and a place to go, because that seemed to me to be the relationship.
We are in Cottage Grove, Oregon, which is about 15 or 20 miles from Eugene, Oregon, and the University of Oregon. Thank you. And we're filming the parade sequence, thank you, for National Lampoon's Animal House, opening August 1978 at a theater or drive-in near you.
He's a very kind of magnetic person.
You just take on his energy. He had a tremendous amount of energy and enthusiasm.
I thought John really captured the tone that was intended. He really was true to the period.
The right director at the right time. I mean, he was just brilliant.
John Belushi admired Landis' skill and talent and trusted him.
John Landis, very troubled man.
He's funny. He's got as much, if not more, energy than anybody else in the room.
He would do anything for anybody. He gave us all medals when we arrived.
John's a jokester and an imp, and he keeps things lively and fun.
Yes, you can. In 10 minutes. Run!
You'll hear when people do Landis, they all talk like this because he was very animated.
Landis looked at all of us and said, "You are all terrible. There was only one of you that was any good, and I'm not going to tell you who that was."
That's not funny! Why did you do that? Why would you do that? That's not funny! Again. Thank you, sir, may I have another. Again. Thank you, sir, may I have another.
That sucked. That was terrible.
Stop. Don't do that. Follow the script. The script is great. Read the script.
38 setups in one day, which is fast for even television. And the work didn't suffer. I mean, we were getting it and getting it good.
John is very self-sufficient, and he knows what he wants. He has an idea of how the scene is going to work in his mind. That's the way he shoots it. He shoots with the pieces he needs to make it work, and his films are really pretty easy to put together.
John was great. I mean, he'd do things like take off his down parka and just kind of hit people across the shoulders and say, be funny, before we'd start a scene.
John created this atmosphere that allowed everybody to kind of go beyond what they might have anyway, and to really be outrageous.
You didn't have to improvise. I mean, they threw me wonderful curves, like they wouldn't let me see Belushi until the actual take.
You can't just improvise a movie script. There are things you can improvise, but it has to be very structured.
I think John shot most of that movie with a single camera. It's very, very tough to cut stuff when people improv if you don't have 2 or 3 cameras going, because you can never imagine anything.
It was extraordinarily faithful, and the script was really crafted, I have to say.
So, of course, that was great. It's never happened to me again since. Every word I've ever written since has been changed.
I'd known Elmer Bernstein since I was a kid. I went to school with his son, Peter.
And years ago when they were little boys, we had taken them to see a Beatles concert at the Hollywood Bowl.
So that's how long I knew Elmer. And Elmer Bernstein's famous for scores like The Ten Commandments, The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, all the John Wayne movies, and the big, incredible jazz scores like Sweet Smell of Success, Man with the Golden Arm. Guy's got an astonishing career.
I got a call from John, who said, I'd like you to come to see a picture I've just directed. I said, well, what is it? And he said, well, it's a thing called Animal House.
When I said, what about Elmer Bernstein to do the music? It was like, I remember they thought I was nuts. They really, so much of what I wanted to do, they really thought I was crazy.
And the studio just didn't understand why John would want a guy who was noted for his great dramatic scores.
I said to John, it's very funny. I still don't understand why me. So John said, well, I have an idea about how to do this. And I must credit John with this because it was John's idea. He said, I want you to score this film as if it were a serious film.
He wanted the score to be basically a very straight underscore that would lay the framework for all this stuff that went on.
I thought that was a very interesting idea, and that's what I did. And actually, it became a seminal thing because it became a way to score comedies. And it was indeed very funny.
When we started shooting, the dailies just sort of leapt off the screen. You could see that something great was going on.
This stuff was really funny. And all of a sudden, people began to show up and stick around.
The first real cut that we had, where everything was in it, but it was still cut pretty well, was about 175 minutes. So we just took George Roy Hill's advice, who came in and screened the movie with us one afternoon, and went on into the evening, because at that point the movie was pretty long. And he said, "John, you just have to take that movie, just grab it like you're grabbing a tree and just shake it. Just shake it, and all the stuff that's not important is going to come right out."
We had our very first public preview, and sort of everybody showed up. This was my first big studio preview, and I'll never forget it, because it was really one of those great, great screenings.
There was a fraternity convention of some kind in town. So the theater where we had our sneak was filled like 80% with frat guys. And so we had a screening that was like the Firebird. They ripped the seats out. They went insane. It was like the most incredibly successful screening ever.
By the middle of the film, they were stomping their feet. I had never been in a movie theater with that kind of reaction.
I audio taped it. I'll never forget, because I went to the lobby and called Belushi in New York. "Listen to this!" I'm playing it. Because it was incredible, riotous. And then the studio thought, gee, maybe there's something here. You know?
I came back to New York and I spent the money from the movie in about a week and a half. And I was back waiting tables again. And the picture came out, and there was I was very excited, obviously, because, here's I'm in this movie, big movie. And I got an invitation to the premiere.
They premiered it. It was a very successful premiere. Everybody was, wildly applauding and everything.
So I get into the movie theater, and I've got the wrong ticket. I got the ticket that says I got to sit in the back. I don't have like the good tickets. And the guy's like, "You can't sit here." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm in the movie. I'm with those guys." He's like, "Oh, you can't sit here." So then I go down to, I think it was maybe the Village Gate. We had the party, I think down in the Village. So I'm figuring, well, now it's after the movie, right? So everybody's seen it. So now I'll be styling, I swear to God, I walked around that party, and I tried my best to try to convince every woman that I saw that I was actually in the movie. And nobody believed me.
Some of my funniest memories are of just watching John Belushi at work and watching, the relationship between him and John Landis.
His bigs were bigger than big, but he also had this side to him which was very sweet and quiet. And I remember just feeling very kind of affectionate towards him.
John was an adorable guy. He was a great guy. He was a sweet guy. Everybody liked John.
I miss Doug Kenney. I miss John Belushi, and I miss the people who made that movie special. But they're made immortal by it.
As a first commercial screenplay, to have that kind of success, it just opened a door for me that was, tremendous, and really allowed me to work, and provided, associations with people that were, that I treasure.
I obviously was just thrilled to be a part of it, and it's I have a real warm spot in my heart about it.
It's a really wonderful, gratifying thing if what you decided to do with your whole life is, tell stories.
It completely surprised me. And what it did for all of us really is it just, doors just opened to us.
It became part of our culture. It was an historical moment for us along the way, and it has stood the test of time.
And I think it gave me, and it gave everybody who worked on it, this unforgettable lesson that it's worth it, and a movie can be everything that you ever wanted it to be.
I'm proud of it. I am very, very proud of it. I've done a lot of different things, but certainly in movies, this is the thing that will always stay with me.
Animal House was such a success and such a boon to everyone's career, and such a positive experience, basically, for everyone.